An empire rarely collapses all at once. More often than not, it simply rebrands, re-evaluates its overhead, and quietly changes the faces printed on its paper to avoid awkward conversations at customs. When a nation sheds a foreign crown, its currency undergoes a bit of an identity crisis. The monarch vanishes, the heraldry gets evicted, and local authorities scramble to figure out what else looks impressive at 3 inches wide. Today, we're tracking that exact transition, from West Africa to the Caribbean, down to East Africa and South. We start on the west coast of Africa with the Gambia. Prior to decimalisation in 1971, Gambian pocket change was tied to the British West African pound, meaning you were carrying around shillings featuring King George VI or Queen Elizabeth II. When they introduced the Gambian dalasi, they skipped the usual political ego trip. If you inspect the 50 Bututs piece from 1971, you'll find the Gambian Ndama ox staring back at you, a delightfully practical metallic declaration. When you strip away colonial administration, you replace it with agricultural self-reliance, and a very stoic-looking cow, which feels wildly appropriate for a nation that had finally gotten over the hump of colonial rule, because this ox is humpless. When most new countries celebrate freedom, they do so with aggressive eagles or roaring lions. The Gambia looked at 3 centuries of British administration and decided to stamp a humpless ox on the 50 Bututs coin to celebrate clearing the hump of empire with an unbothered, flat-backed cow that couldn't care less about European politics. Moving across to the Caribbean, we have Barbados, $5. Barbados gained independence in 1966, but spent 7 years using Eastern Caribbean Currency Board notes before the Central Bank of Barbados issued its own official currency series in 1973. Instead of filling the paper with local politicians or distant royalty, they featured Sir Frank Worrell. Normally it's being born into the royal family or being very safely dead that earns you that honour, but Sir Frank managed it by simply being an unstoppable cricket captain, leading the West Indies cricket into a legendary golden era. His physical skill with a bat was world-class, but his true genius was taking a fractured group of island talents and turning them into the most beloved, dominant cricket team on the planet. It's why historians often refer to him as the Nelson Mandela of cricket. In news from August 1975, police investigated an unprecedented act of sabotage at Headingley Cricket Ground during the Ashes. Protester Peter Chappell and his crew snuck onto the ground overnight, digging holes into the pitch and pouring engine oil across the wicket. Leaving a trail of oil-soaked boots and white paint straight from the scene, Chappell was promptly arrested. Proof positive that in cricket, crime leaves a very clear footprint. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming, already in progress, and frankly, far less slick than that pitch. Next we head to East Africa, Uganda, for 200 shillings. Uganda's post-independence years were defined by rapid, often tumultuous political shifts. Yet examine the denomination. It's still called the shilling. This is a direct linguistic hangover from the East African shilling, introduced by the British Colonial Office back in 1921. On the back, you'll find a coffee farmer. Uganda went on to become the undisputed coffee-exporting titan of the entire African continent. It proves a vital economic truth. You can have all the quill pens and velvet waistcoats in London, but your currency is ultimately backed by a man with a spade, and enough caffeine to keep a room full of hungover undergraduates awake through an 8-hour lecture on 17th century soil rotation. To close out, let's look at what is arguably the most awkward breakup in the history of British imperial currency. If you glance at this 1955 2-shilling piece, you'd be forgiven for assuming you were looking at standard domestic pocket change. Same size, same weight, same distinct scent of post-war British austerity. But look closer at the legend. By the 1950s, South Africa was technically a self-governing dominion. They made their own laws, but on paper, and on their money, they were still tethered to the Crown. They kept the pre-decimal system of pounds, shillings and pence, because apparently multi-base arithmetic was one imperial tradition nobody was in a hurry to fix. That slow bureaucratic limbo couldn't last forever. In 1960, a public referendum decided it was time to cut the cord entirely. In 1961, South Africa formally showed the British monarchy the door, declared itself a republic, and promptly got itself kicked out of the Commonwealth. Naturally, if you're firing the Queen, you have to fire her from your money too. Out went the absurd 12 pence to a shilling system. In came the decimalised rand, where 1 rand equalled 10 shillings. The royal profile on the obverse was scrubbed and eventually replaced by regional flora and fauna. Which makes a lot of sense, really. Politicians come and go, empires collapse, but a kudu is vastly less controversial and considerably better looking on a coin. 4 types of money. 4 distinct ways to tell a former empire to keep the change. From Gambian oxen to Barbadian cricket legends, proof that while empires write the history books, they rarely get the final say on what goes in your wallet. Thanks for stopping by today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and see you at the next minting.